Okay, so the Buddha's been invited to return to Kapilavatthu, where he grew up, and then this is from the Mahavagga. When the Blessed One had stayed at Rajagaha as long as he chose, he set out for Kapilavatthu. Wandering by stages, he eventually arrived there, and he stayed in Nigroda's park. Now, when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went to the residence of Suddhodana, the Sakyan, and there he sat down on a seat made ready. And then the voice shifts to Bhikkhu Nyanamoli. The account of this visit given in the canon is brief to the point of abruptness. So before proceeding with it, a few details from the commentary will make the situation clearer. So this next bit is from the commentary. When the Buddha arrived at Kapilavatthu, the Sakyan clansmen, well known for their pride, were disinclined to pay homage to him. Thereupon he displayed the twin marvel, causing the simultaneous appearance of jets of fire and water from all his limbs. This was followed by the preaching of the Vaisantara birth story. After the first ceremonial meal had been given to him in his father's palace, he preached the Dhammapala birth story, and the king attained to the third or penultimate stage of realization. He died an arhat some 4 years later. At the same time, the queen, Mahapajapati, mother of Prince Nanda, an aunt of the Buddha, attained the first stage of realization. That same day had been chosen for the celebration to mark the forthcoming marriage of Prince Nanda, Queen Mahapajapati's only son. Now when the Buddha rose to go, he gave Prince Nanda his bowl to hold and departed. Not knowing what to do, Prince Nanda followed him with the bowl, and as he left, his bride-to-be called to him, "Come back soon, Prince." When they arrived at the Buddha's dwelling, the Buddha asked him if he would leave the house life. Out of reverence, rather than inclination, he agreed. On the seventh day, the Buddha again took his meal in his father's palace. And then the canonical account from the from the Vinaya Mahavagga continues after that. The Vaisantara birth story in Thailand is extremely popular, and certainly there's an annual festival of the recitation of the Buddha's birth story, and it's a very big festival. Of course, everybody gets drunk and eats, but it's not quite the reverential, but it holds a special place in throughout Thailand, in particular the and I can't remember what the Dhammapala birth story is. Then Prince Rahula's mother then said to Prince Rahula, "That is your father, Rahula. Go and ask for your inheritance." So this is from the Vinaya Mahavagga. That is your father, Rahula. Go and ask for your inheritance. So Prince Rahula went to the Blessed One and stood before him. "Your shadow was pleasant, monk." Then so he would have been about 7 years old at the time, I think, 7, 8 years old. Then the Blessed One got up from his seat and went away. Prince Rahula followed behind the Blessed One, saying, "Give me my inheritance, monk. Give me my inheritance, monk." Then the Blessed One told the Venerable Sariputta, "Then, Sariputta, give him the going forth." So his it's not quite the inheritance that people in the world would be banking on. How am I to give Prince Rahula the going forth, Lord? The Blessed One then made this the reason and the occasion to give a talk on the Dhamma, and he addressed the bhikkhus thus. I would imagine that there was probably the first, say, novice or young boy who actually ordained. Up to that time, it was mostly adults and mostly people who were already wanderers or people who were adults and gained faith in the Buddha. So then the Buddha says, I allow the going forth to be given by means of the 3 refuges, but it should be given in this way. First, the hair and beard must be shaved off and the yellow robe put on. Then he who is to go forth should arrange his robe on one shoulder, and after paying homage at the bhikkhu's feet, he should kneel, and with his hands raised, palms together, he should say this: I go to the Buddha for refuge, I go to the Dhamma for refuge, I go to the Sangha for refuge, for the second time, for the third time. Then the Venerable Sariputta gave Prince Rahula the going forth. Now Suddhodana the Sakyan went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side. He said, I ask one favor of the Blessed One. Perfect ones, or Tathagatas, have left favors behind, Gotama. It is permissible, Lord, and blameless. Tell it then, Gotama. Lord, I suffered no little pain when the Blessed One went forth. Then there was Nanda. Rahula is too much. Love for our children, Lord, cuts into the outer skin. Having cut into the outer skin, it cuts into the inner skin. Having cut into the inner skin, it cuts into the flesh. Having cut into the flesh, it cuts into the sinews. Having cut into the sinews, it cuts into the bones. Having cut into the bones, it reaches the marrow and stays there. Lord, it would be good if the Venerable Ones did not give the going forth without the parents' consent. The Blessed One instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged Suddhodana the Sakyan with talk on the Dhamma. Then Suddhodana the Sakyan got up from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, he left, keeping him on his right. The Blessed One then made this the reason and the occasion to give a talk on the Dhamma, and he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, you should not give the going forth to children without their parents' consent. If anyone does this, he commits an offense of wrongdoing. So that also is applied to not just to children or young boys, but through the even for adults who are coming to take. They're like not just for children who are taking the novice precepts, but also for adults who are taking the bhikkhu training. And it's actually in one of the questions that the preceptor asks the candidates. Then, actually, any questions so far before we continue on the narrative? Okay. So then it comes back to to narrator 1, who is basically Bhikkhu Nyanamoli. Tradition claims that the decision of the Buddha's cousin Ananda and others to leave the house life was made at the time of this visit. The Buddha had already gone away from Kapilavatthu, but was still in the northern parts of Kosala. Meanwhile, the 2 following incidents may have occurred about now, though there is no definite indication where to place them. So then this is from the Udana. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was journeying through the coastal country with the Venerable Nagasamala as his attendant monk. On the way, the Venerable Nagasamala saw a fork in the road. He said to the Blessed One, "Lord, that is the way. Let us go that way." When this was said, the Blessed One replied, "This is the way, Nagasamala. Let us go this way." So the different direction, different fork. A second and a third time, the Venerable Nagasamala said the same thing and received the same answer. Then he put the Blessed One's bowl and outer robe down on the ground and departed. As he went along the road, as he went along that road, robbers appeared, and they beat him with cuffs and kicks and broke his bowl and tore his cloak to patches. Afterwards, he came to the Blessed One with his bowl broken and his cloak of patches torn, and he told him what had happened. Knowing the meaning of this, the Blessed One then uttered this exclamation: "A wise man and a foolish one walked and lived in company. Milk-drinking cranes leave marsh water. The wise leave what they know is bad." Udana are these inspired utterances. So that there was a few occasions like this where the Buddha's attendant was not actually attending so well, and that was what precipitated. I think with Nanda ended up being the Buddha's attendant like for 25 years, but this is just one of the incidents that were sort of evidence that the Buddha needed a regular attendant, and you never quite know. Sometimes. I had that happen to me where my attendant monk left my bowl in the road, and I never quite figured out what the heck was going on with him. It was somebody else had to go back and get it, but it wasn't my robe and bowl. It's just my bowl, and coming back from alms round. Okay, then the next is from the Samyutta Nikaya.
Sir Panyo is Upatak one time.
Dropped his robes in the river.
Yes, it's the joys of being Ajahn and being looked after. And so the next one is from this is another occasion during these early days, which hard to place, but that's Bhikkhu Nyanamoli is sort of guessing is probably around this time. This is from the Samyutta Nikaya, Samyutta 4, Sutta number 20, which would be the Mara Samyutta. Now, while the Blessed One was staying in the coastal country at Aranyakutika on the slopes of the Himalayas, the thought arose in his mind when he was alone in retreat: is it possible to govern without killing and ordering execution, without confiscating and sequestrating, without sorrowing and inflicting sorrow? In other words, righteously. Then Mara, the evil one, became aware in his mind of the thought in the Blessed One's mind, and he went to him and said, "Let the Blessed One govern. Let the Sublime One govern. without killing and ordering execution, without confiscating and sequestrating, without sorrowing and inflicting sorrow. In other words, righteously. Evil one, what end have you in view that you address me thus? Lord, the 4 bases for success have been constantly maintained in being by the Blessed One. So that's the Iddhipadas, Chanda, Virya, Citta, Vimamsa. Constantly practiced, made the vehicle, made the basis, established, consolidated, and properly undertaken. And so, Lord, if the Blessed One were willing to resolve, let Himalaya, king of mountains, be made of gold, it would become a gold mountain. And then this is in verse, and the Buddha replying to that. And were that mountain all of yellow gold, twice that is not enough for one man's wants. To know this is to act accordingly. How should a man who has been suffering, and whence its source, turn to sense desires? For when he knows this substance of rebirth is that which binds him to the world, a man cannot but train to rid himself of it. Then Mara, the evil one, understood. The Blessed One knows me, the Sublime One knows me. Sad and disappointed, he vanished at once. So that those 4 bases for success those are part of the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, the wings to awakening, and they are generally some bases of Iddhi are also Iddhipada. Iddhi is like psychic powers or spiritual powers. And but it has a broader sense of success, both in terms of spiritual success, but then also in terms of worldly. If one's going to accomplish anything, any task at hand, be successful at it, then it requires that sense of chanda in terms of desire, interest, motivation, chanda, virya, effort, some energy, citta, kind of the application of the mind, vimamsa, the investigation, reflection, recollection, reminding oneself, reviewing what works, what doesn't work. And those Iddhipadas come up throughout the canon many, many times, and I found a interesting sutta that where the Iddhipadas are used, and this Majjhima 16, the wilderness in the heart, Cetokhila Sutta. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this, Bhikkhus, that any bhikkhu who has not abandoned 5 wildernesses in the heart and not severed 5 shackles in the heart should come to growth, increase, and fulfillment in this Dhamma and discipline. That is impossible. What bhikkhus are the 5 wildernesses in the heart that he has not abandoned? Here a bhikkhu is doubtful, uncertain, undecided, and unconfident about the teacher. And thus his mind does not, teacher is with a capital letter, so it's like the, not having the, one is uncertain, undecided, unconfident about the Tathagata, the Buddha. So that's the first one. unconfident about the teacher, and thus his mind is not inclined to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving. As his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving, this is the first wilderness in the heart that he is not abandoned. Again, a bhikkhu is doubtful, uncertain, undecided, and unconfident about the Dhamma, and then about the Sangha, about the training. As his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving, this is the fourth wilderness of the heart, and that he is not abandoned. So the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the training Sikha. Again, a bhikkhu is angry and displeased with his companions in the holy life, resentful and callous towards them, and thus his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving. As his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving, that is the fifth wilderness in the heart that he is not abandoned. These are the five wildernesses in the heart that he is not abandoned. What bhikkhus are the five shackles of the heart that he is not severed? Here a bhikkhu is not free from lust, desire, affection, thirst, fever, and craving for sensual pleasures, and thus his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving. As his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving, that is the first shackle in the heart that he is not severed. Again, a bhikkhu is not free from lust, desire, affection, thirst, fever, and craving for the body. As his mind does not incline to ardor, that is the second shackle in the heart that he is not severed. Again, a bhikkhu is not free from lust, desire, affection, thirst, fever, and craving for form. As his mind does not incline to ardor, that is the third shackle in the heart that he is not severed. Again, a bhikkhu eats as much as he likes until his belly is full and indulges in the pleasures of sleeping, lolling, and drowsing. As his mind does not incline to ardor, that is the fourth shackle in the heart that he is not severed. Again, a bhikkhu lives the holy life aspiring to some order of gods thus. By this virtue or observance or asceticism or holy life, I shall become a great god or some lesser god. And thus his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving. As his mind does not incline to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving, this is the fifth shackle in the heart that he is not severed. These are the five shackles in the heart that he is not severed. Bhikkhus, that any bhikkhu who has not abandoned these five wildernesses in the heart and severed these five shackles in the heart should come to growth, increase, and fulfillment in this Dhamma and discipline, that is impossible. Bhikkhus, that any bhikkhu who has abandoned five wildernesses in the heart and severed five shackles in the heart should come to growth, increase, and fulfillment in this Dhamma and discipline, that is possible. And what bhikkhus are the five wildernesses in the heart that he has abandoned? And of course he goes through that again. They say the abandons, the being doubtful, uncertain, undecided, unconfident about the teacher, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the training, Sikha, and his abandon, he is not angry and displeased with his companions in the holy life. He's not resentful and callous towards them, and thus his mind inclines to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving. And then the five, and what are the five shackles in the heart that he has severed? Here, a bhikkhu is free from lust, desire, affection, thirst, fever, and craving for sensual pleasures, craving for the body, craving for form, and he does not eat as much as he likes until his belly is full and does not indulge in the pleasures of sleeping, lolling, and drowsing. And he does not live the holy life, aspiring to some order of gods. Thus, as his mind inclines to ardor, devotion, perseverance, and striving, this fifth shackle in the heart has been severed by him. Bhikkhus, that any bhikkhu who has abandoned these 5 wildernesses in the heart and severed these 5 shackles in the heart should come to growth, increase, and fulfillment in this Dhamma and discipline. That is possible. He develops the basis for spiritual power, Iddhipada, basis for spiritual power consisting in concentration due to zeal and determined striving. He develops the basis for spiritual power consisting in concentration due to energy and determined striving. He develops the basis for spiritual power consisting in concentration due to purity of mind and determined striving. He develops the basis for spiritual power consisting in concentration due to investigation and determined striving. And enthusiasm is the 5th, because he's dealing in 5, so he rounds it out, making sure that it all adds up. A bhikkhu who thus possesses the 15 factors, including enthusiasm, is capable of breaking out, capable of enlightenment, capable of attaining the supreme security from bondage. Suppose there were a hen with 8, 10, or 12 eggs, which she had covered, incubated, and nurtured properly, even though she did not wish, "Oh, that my chicks might pierce their shells with the points of their claws and beaks and hatch out safely." Yet the chicks are capable of piercing their shells with the points of their claws and beaks and hatching out safely. So too, a bhikkhu who possesses the 15 factors, including enthusiasm, is capable of breaking out, capable of enlightenment, capable of attaining the supreme security from bondage. That is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So that those 4, and that's also both those bases of spiritual power, the Iddhipadas are talked about, but they're also oftentimes linked with, say, the samadhi based on, say, chanda, samadhi based on effort, samadhi based on the citta, the purity of mind, settling, samadhi based on investigation. So that those are ways and pathways into cultivation of samadhi, and then enthusiasm as the 5th quality is one that I had not come across before. The word in Pali is usolhi, Ussolhi, and it's sort of enthusiasm, effort. But I thought that was an interesting kind of aspect of that particular teaching. Okay. Any questions?
Could you say a little bit about what chitta is, like the
Citta is sort of purity of mind. It's also, that's how it's translated there. I've seen it also as the, the settling of the mind. where the mind is settled, it's established in clarity and stillness, stability of mind. So it's like a shorthand pointing to the kind of a fulfillment of the mind being stable, clear, steady, purified to a certain degree. I mean, it's not, purity of mind is not in an absolute sense, but it's that sense of the mind turning to turning to purity.
And then how would concentration or samadhi based on reviewing? Like how is that?
How's it? Oh, it's investigation. I mean, that's like whole basis of vipassana is you're using the reflective mind to both to review and reflect on experience, review and reflect on effort, review and reflect on what helps the mind be stable, what helps the mind be, what helps the mind penetrate, what helps the mind let go, what helps. So that reviewing and investigating, and in that reflection, that sense of whatever is of the nature to arise, that's of the nature to cease. That's an investigation of impermanence as opposed to some kind of trying to force that on the mind. One is actually seeing or experiencing or realizing impermanence. So in that reviewing, similarly with say dukkha or anatta, it's like that one is reviewing it and seeing it clearly, and because of that there is a relinquishing, and with that relinquishing then there's a settling and stilling. Yeah.
How would you differentiate chanda and enthusiasm?
Chanda is Chanda, and yes, Ussolh. I mean, they're obviously linked, and I think the Buddha is he's wanting to make it neat and tidy. There's the 5 wildernesses, there's the 5 shackles, and then there's these 4 bases of success. Well, we want 5 because we want to sort of tie it up with a nice bow, and sometimes also just in terms of using different that sense of enthusiasm, because sometimes say like with chanda is like. Sometimes it's translated as zeal, as he did here, but then it's also sometimes it's just translated as desire or motivation or interest, and that can be a bit, come across as a bit sort of cool, and enthusiasm is a bit more engaged, just by virtue of the word one uses. So then I think the Buddha's emphasizing that you have to sort of arouse some zeal and enthusiasm and interest and the effort and the ardor and devotion will be kind of more self-sustaining. Yeah.
In the sutta you just read, the way they were phrased, it's usually the way the phrases, it's like concentration due to desire, concentration due to like samadhi, and then it's this like compound of samadhi connected to chanda virya. Do you think, is that sort of, or sort of the idea there that these are all kind of qualities that we have to kind of bring to meditation practice, samadhi, or are they kind of more general for the path, or would you look at it more as focused on, say, the eighth factor of the path?
I would say that that one, it depends on the setting. Certainly but I think also that because sometimes the Buddha uses it stands alone. Sometimes he uses it in conjunction with that, with samadhi, based on each one, and so it depends on the setting, depends on the application, but certainly that I think that sense that of how it's expressed is that samadhi does have roots in different, because different things grab the mind so that it actually settles. And so sometimes just that arousing of interest or zeal or motivation helps to focus and collect the mind. But sometimes it requires an actual, effort and also the just the cooling of the heart so that it actually settles, and then the investigation so that it's different doorways that I think are all valid, so that when the Buddha is explicit like that, then I think it really opens up because I would think even in the time of the Buddha, that in the same way that we do, okay, I got to get my samadhi together, so I got to knuckle down and keep my mind on my breath. But there's different ways of doing that and different avenues of actually of approaching that settling of the mind, the establishing the mind firmly, that are important, and we can trip ourselves up by our ardor and zeal, and we can facilitate things through our ardor and zeal. So that requires that investigation and attention. Yeah.
For the Iddhipadas, they all have, I don't know the Pali word, they all have like energy or effort as a conjoined factor.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering how that differs, that effort that appears in all the Iddhipadas, I'm wondering how that differs from Virya.
Well, I mean, I think it's not going to differ in the sense of it as it being a different quality, but I think by drawing attention to it, then, because I mean the Buddha is quite explicit sometimes of saying that this is a teaching, a Viryavada. This is a teaching of effort, because there were teachings at the time of the Buddha where all effort is useless and there's no point in putting forth effort, because it's like everything's going to play itself out anyway, and everything is predestined. And the Buddha said, no, effort is absolutely crucial. So then, in the basis of success, then effort is then kind of explicitly, and it's not always there, but oftentimes it is, and so that then it's also saying, these are, if one is going to succeed at this whole path, then effort needs to be applied. And then it goes into, of course, say, how one engages, say, effort what is, just by the effort in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path, then really paying attention to what is it that increases wholesome dhammas, decreases unwholesome dhammas, and that. So I don't know that there's a really absolute difference between, say, virya, because it's probably like in the same way that usolhi is also another word for effort. Which, again, I've never come across this word before, but in the I have a somewhat cursory Pali dictionary in my iPad, and it just translation of usolhi is enthusiasm, effort. So it's so that there's say virya, vayama, and there's probably a few other words that have that same kind of connotation of effort, because it's in the same way that how the Buddha is ardent. Even in English, there's several words that are used to describe kind of effort in different ways. So I imagine the Buddha was very, very similar, just using different words that were common at the time to convey that necessity of effort needs to be applied.